Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. COVID cases in Hong Kong surged to an all-time high. A preliminary positive case forces a 2-day closure of the Sogo department store. And China and the United States trade verbal blows over North Korean missile tests. New COVID cases in Hong Kong have jumped to its highest level since the pandemic began in late 2019. The sharp rise of mainly Omicron infections sent officials scrambling to free up hospital beds for patients. Isaac Lee reports.
There was more grim news today, with Health Chief Sophia Chen announcing a record number of COVID cases. Hong Kong added 351 infections, compared with 131 yesterday. Most of the new cases, 343 in all, were local transmissions. Of those cases, 161 were without known sources, also a record.
All the signs have told us that there are silent transmission chains in the community. I think it is important for us to stop all those activities and stop mixing. I think this is one way that the public can help, that everybody can help with this delaying, the spread of Omicron.
About 200 preliminary positive cases were reported, a sign that tomorrow's figures will remain high. Chen and her team followed up on measures announced by Chief Executive Carrie Lam yesterday. To alleviate the shortage of hospital beds, the Penny's Bay Quarantine Center will accommodate from next week asymptomatic patients or those with mild symptoms instead of close contacts. If the situation worsens, close contacts may have to isolate at home for 2 weeks, while those living with them must stay home for 4 days. There is growing concern over the spread of the virus through vertical transmission across the city. Buildings affected include Sau Tai House in Fu Tai Estates in Tuen Mun, Leung Chi House in Leung King Estates in the same district, Po Ning House in Cheung Kwai No's Po Lam Estates, and a tenement building on 104 Fook Wing Street in Sham Shui Po. The blocks were partially evacuated. More cases have been found in Heng Ping House in Tai Heng Estate, which was opened this morning after a 2-day lockdown. All residents living in Units 29 have been evacuated. Yunnan Plaza was closed after several security guards, cleaners and shop assistants tested positive. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
The government minister in charge of the COVID vaccination program says restrictions will be extended to more venues, but stopped short of giving details.
When we decide on what sort of social distancing measures that are required, basically we will look at the outcome and the effect of such measures, whether it would effectively reduce the flow of people in the community so as to achieve our objective of cutting all these transmission lines.
The city's biggest department store has been forced to close for 2 days after an employee tested preliminary positive for COVID. This came as lockdowns in several areas led to the discovery of 23 preliminary positive cases. Isaac Lee has more.
Many people are still in the mood for post-holiday shopping, but this 18-story department store in Causeway Bay is out of bounds. Sogo is closed for the weekend after one of its workers tested positive for COVID. The store is undergoing disinfection while all employees have to be tested. The virus, meanwhile, has continued to force the closure of residential buildings. Heng Ping House in Tai Heng Estate, where vertical and horizontal transmissions were identified, reopened this morning after a 2-day closure. 13 of the 5,000 residents in the Tuen Mun block tested preliminary positive, and 2 samples were inconclusive. In Sham Shui Po, several tenement buildings experienced a night under lockdown after the virus was found in sewage samples. 4 out of the 2,100 residents tested preliminary positive, while the others were free to go this morning. Also sealed off overnight were Tsui Chuk Garden in Wong Tai Sin and K-City in Kai Tak, where a total of 6 preliminary positive cases were identified. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Less than 3 weeks before the budget, the financial secretary says he's open-minded on another round of consumption vouchers. But Paul Chan said the city's economy and the government's financial situation will be the determining factors. He added that authorities will consider helping the unemployed as demanded by the labor sector. Details will be announced together with the next round of anti-epidemic funds. Another 3 women accused of assaulting children have been granted bail a day after their arrest. They were barred from leaving the city and had to pay a surety of $10,000 each. The trio pleaded for anonymity, but the prosecution objected on the principle of open justice. They were the latest of the 23 workers of a Mongkok care home arrested for child abuse. About 40 toddlers were allegedly maltreated in the foster home run by the Society for the Protection of Children. China and the United States have crossed swords in the United Nations Security Council during a debate on North Korea's latest missile test. Beijing urged Washington to meet Pyongyang halfway. North Korea took center stage at the United Nations Security Council after raising tension with at least 7 missile tests so far this year. The latest launch was of an intermediate-range ballistic missile, believed to be capable of reaching the U.S. territory of Guam. Washington raced to rally its allies to call for action against Pyongyang as past negotiations failed to achieve détente.
The cost of the Council's ongoing silence is too high. It will embolden the DPRK to further defy the international community, to normalize its violations of Security Council resolutions, to further destabilize the region, and to continue to threaten international peace and security. This is an outcome that we should not accept.
China, Pyongyang's diplomatic ally and permanent member of the Council, accused Washington of perpetuating a cycle of hostility and recalled the meetings between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and former U.S. President Donald Trump.
We have all seen what happened in Singapore. We have all seen what happened in Hanoi. And we have seen the suspension of the nuclear test. We have seen the suspension of the launch of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then what have been done by the US? Confrontation, condemnation, sanctions, and then coming back to condemnation, confrontation, and sanctions again. So what will be the end?
Beijing urged Washington to be flexible in its approach with Pyongyang. People in Morocco are praying and hoping as rescuers move closer to a boy who fell into a 32-meter deep hole 3 days ago. Crews using bulldozers dug vertically to a depth of 31 meters, then stopped because they feared soil instability. They are now trying to reach the 5-year-old named Ryan by digging a tunnel horizontally. Thousands of people have gone to the site in northern Morocco to encourage the rescuers who are hopeful of reaching Ryan soon. Food, water, and an oxygen mask have been lowered to him, and a medical team is standing by. Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has openly rebuffed his former boss Donald Trump's false claim that his number 2 had the right to toss out Joe Biden's electoral victory. Trump blamed his defeat on voter fraud.
And I heard this week that President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. Under Article 2, Section 1, elections are conducted at the state level, not by the Congress. The only role Congress has with respect to the Electoral College is to open and count votes submitted and certified by the states. No more, no less.
The U.S. State Department spokesman has been grilled by a reporter who demanded evidence of an American claim that Russia plans to film a fake Ukrainian attack as a pretext for invasion.
Where is the declassified information other than you coming out here and saying? Matt, I'm sorry you don't like the format, but we have
It's not the format, it's the content.
I'm sorry you don't like the content. I'm sorry
It's not that I don't like
you
it,
are
we're
doubting the information that is in the possession of the U.S. government.
What is the evidence that you have that suggests that the Russians are even planning this?
Matt,
I'm not saying that they're not, but you just come out and say this and expect us just to believe it without you showing a shred of evidence that it's actually true.
If you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to find solace in information that the Russians are putting out, that is for you to do.
Australia's Deputy Prime Minister has apologized to Prime Minister Scott Morrison for calling him a liar and a hypocrite in a text message last year. Barnaby Joyce defended himself by saying his views were based on assumptions before he had a working relationship with the Prime Minister.
I should never have written the text that I did. I certainly never expected the text to be forwarded on. And I don't blame anybody but myself, but I never expected it to end up in the public realm. But it would not have ended up in the public realm had I not written it, so the fault is mine. When it came to light a couple of days ago, I rang the Prime Minister immediately. I apologised. He accepted my apology. I offered my resignation, and he did not accept my resignation.
Some Rotterdam residents are up in arms after the Dutch port city confirmed that it will temporarily dismantle a historic bridge to allow the passage of a yacht owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos.
But this is the world's richest man that evades taxes and wants to mess with our monument. That's just not okay. I think that's why it's controversial.
Others, including this woman, stress the economic benefits of the move. The luxury yacht being built by a Dutch firm is too long and too tall to sail under the Koningsschiffen Bridge. The builder of the record-breaking vessel agreed to pay for the dismantling work. Having survived earlier demolition attempts, officials have promised not to touch the 95-year-old structure after it was renovated in 2017. Onto the weather now, mainly cloudy tomorrow with some rain in the morning and at night. Temperatures range between 14 and 18 degrees. Same on Monday, but sunny periods will return on Tuesday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for this Saturday night. Join us for more news at 10. I'm Sarah Wong. Thanks for joining us and take care.